You're listening to Nakedly Examined Music, a podcast about songs and songwriters. My name is Mark Lintonmeyer. My guest for episode 245 is Canadian guitarist Darren Michael Boyd, who after releasing an EP and a single in 2018, turned pretty much entirely to guitar-led instrumentals, and he's released 6 albums of that since 2019. You're right now hearing the title track to the second of those albums, Wonders of the Invisible World. We're going to talk today about The Day Beneath Yesterday from his new album Perpetual Night, Broken Glass and Disappointment from his 2022 album Thoughts and Scares. Then we'll look back to the first of those albums, The Earth is B-Flat, from Lifting the Curse 2019. And we'll conclude by listening to another song from the new album, Dangerous Curves. You can learn more about Darren at darrenboyd.com or darrenmichaelboyd.bandcamp.com. Learn more about this podcast at nakedlyexaminedmusic.com or support the effort at patreon.com/nakedlyexaminedmusic, which will get you an ad-free version of this feed, and you'll get to see the notes that I use for these interviews that diagram the songs, highlighting the potential discussion points, and often providing comments that don't make it into the interview. Let's get going. So I will have played a little of the title track from Wonders of the Invisible World, your second full album, to warm people up. It's definitely a solid metal base, but you do so much more than that. You want to give a little sketch? I see you've got 6 albums since about 2019, an EP and a single and things before that where you actually had a singer, but all your full albums have been just you.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Do you want to say a little about the shape of this career here before we get into the first song here?
I was playing in I think it was about 5 different bands in like 2018. Up to that point, I was just running myself into the ground with, work and everything else, right? Yeah, and I had a car accident, and this has been publicized, of course, and somebody just ran a red light into me, and I'm here to bitch about it, so that's good, but it changed my life real quick for a couple of years. And so as a result, I still wanted to play music, but I had a bunch of weird songs that didn't really fit anywhere. So I just decided I'm going to, make this instrumental song. I'm going to make a video. And I did that, and people really responded to it. I went, oh, that's interesting. So I just kept going with it. And next thing you know, it turned into a kind of a legitimate project. So yeah, that's where it went. And when I say it doesn't fit anywhere, it's just kind of like it's an excuse for me to explore all the music that I love making. It doesn't have to be metal. I mean, I definitely have a background in metal. I grew up listening to a lot of it and playing it, but it hasn't been my focus, but I definitely lean into it once in a while.
Well, let's get the first song out there, which, has some metal elements, but the main melody, I even wrote like George Harrison, like, I don't know if that was
no way.
on your radar at all. The Day Beneath Yesterday from your new album, Perpetual Night. Do you want to say a few words about it before we hear it?
My band, we started to play it for the first live show since the album, and everybody seems to really love it, to really respond to it well. So George Harrison, though, that's interesting. It's
I mean, there's no slide on it. It's not, I'm not being literal here, but just something about the melody, the shape of the melody.
Yeah, that's true. Well, you know what? Beatles love their 7 chords, and I definitely throw some of that, and the suspended stuff, and that. I just love the airy sound of it,
or a little bits of Weezer, that they listen to their Kiss, but then they can do these da 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 da, these kind of show tune gestures. There's a little bit in that, just the way that you use some of the phrases. I guess let's let people hear it before we talk anymore. So yeah, say something about like your choice of guitar tones in this, just getting started.
It's weird. I'm not really sure where this one came from. It was fairly close to the end of the recording. And I know it sounds like a weird thing, but, musicians or artists, writers, anything, they will often say that they'll come up with something and it came from the sky, right? They're like, it's not to sound like all trippy or anything, but they're like, I obviously wrote it, but I don't know where it came from. Some people say that they're lucky enough that happens like once in their life, but it's happened to me. It happens to me all the time because I think I just allow it. I like it comes and I kind of get out of the driver's seat and just kind of give directions, like, all right, whatever. And so once that starts happening, it's like, okay, I definitely need a sparkly, clean tone for the rhythm guitar. And I was using my Lato. It's most people, if you're from the US, you may not know what I'm talking about. It's a Canadian handmade guitar. They were huge in the 80s. All the bands from Canada, like Lieren and Honeymoon Suite and all these bands, I don't know if you even know some of these, but they were big in Canada. They were all using those guitars. And I still have mine. And that was the one that I used on that song, in that recording.
So I see you have a 7-string behind you. This is not the 7-string. We're not hearing the super low chunks or anything here.
The Jackson, yeah. No, I use that a bit, but sometimes I'll throw in that in surprising places where there's a low note or low notes, but it's not necessarily just gent stuff. I've never been really good at that anyway, but that's my first 7-string, and I do like it. It's got fan frets, so for guitar players, it's a weird thing. You got to get used to it because they're not straight like all the other ones. And I guess it's supposed to keep the intonation better because of the lower strings, the tension or something. And I don't know.
So your typical singer-songwriter can multitask because you can play some chords while you're singing something with your mouth. When you're doing something clearly like this, where you have a definite backing part and then da 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 da, like, are you writing the lead with your mouth basically, or are you, what comes first?
Yeah, good question. Sometimes for me, I love coming up with a really good, interesting chord structure, at least interesting to me again, the 7 chords and stuff like that. Not always, but it's definitely not Ramones or something like that, which I certainly have nothing against the Ramones. I can definitely appreciate that. But I just mean in terms of creating melodies lends itself to finding notes that there's a texture there, I guess, when it's a little more, when the chords are slightly more sophisticated, for lack of a better term. But yeah, so sometimes the melody is just in my head. A lot of times I'll sit down with the guitar and I'll record something going, okay, I kind of like this scale or whatever with this piece of music. And then usually what I do is the opposite of most guitar players, where I'll listen back and go, all right, I need to drop about 60% of the notes. It's just like, I don't need a whole whack of crazy shredding. I need to take some of those notes out, find the key melody of what I'm trying to say, and make every note count. And I think in a song like that, like The Day Beneath Yesterday, it's evident. Like, I could have fit a lot of crazy guitar stuff in there, but it was just about, if you're not a fan of guitar shredding, you could just listen to it and enjoy the song. That's what I try to do with most of the music, actually.
And in terms of like the drum pattern, I mean, it seems pretty natural. Like, are you dictating that? Are you demoing that on your drum machine? Or are you just kind of playing this at your drummer and letting him?
No. Everything that's played is all me. I started off taking drum lessons when I was about 8. Oh. But still, when I do it, it's kind of a hybrid between playing like electronic drums and, because I can't physically play as well as my mind, because I don't really play except for when I have an idea. So I definitely edit it heavily, but I don't just program a beat and like, throw in a generic fill or something.
Clearly it was all very like meticulously mapped out. That's why I thought maybe you were sitting down with a drum machine and like doing, but then I saw a video of you with a band and you're saying you're, working this up with the live set.
In the early videos, it's actually kind of goofy because there's me playing different parts. Like, I've done it in a couple of videos just for fun, where I'm, playing all the musical parts in the video. Kind of like Wolfgang Van Halen has done since, only not as good. Not with the budget, it's just kind of stupid where I'm wearing a wig or something where it's like obviously me, but I'm just being funny with it.
Well, we will link folks to some of those videos so they can check out. Let's go through a few of the patterns here. Actually, let's just start the beginning here. Let me play the beginning and then going into the different guitar tone about 13 seconds in. Are you just flipping the switch on your guitar? What is, so it's a different pickup or what? Do you even remember?
That is so funny because I've tried to replicate it live because I know there's a change and it doesn't sound like that. So, because that's what I hear. It sounds like I went from the bridge pickup to the neck pickup in the second part. It absolutely sounds like that's what I did. But when I try to do it live, it doesn't sound right. So I just don't bother. But yeah, so you're right. I'm not sure. I don't fully remember. That would be my guess. If I were just listening to it, I'd be like, oh, just switch the pickup. That's all. Yeah,
the second sound, I have a Fender Jazzmaster, and that's a very familiar. The second sound evokes what that does, what I'm hearing out of myself with that. Maybe the first one was kind of what I was thinking was George Harrison-esque, even though you are obviously the lead voice of that guitar.
Yeah.
But it's kind of just a little bit of a laid back.
It's not your normal piercing metal tone that you often use.
No. That's one of the things that I've learned. You'd think I would have learned from playing live, but I've learned more from doing these albums because I've been the one mixing and engineering and producing it all. So as a result, you kind of go, I don't need anywhere near that much gain. So I kind of roll that back, and it just sounds a lot better in a recording when you don't have the gain just cranked sometimes, depending on the song, of course.
Well, let me play right after that. So this is 27 seconds where the little metal bit comes in. Which the lead is still kind of spacey, little 80s kind of tone. Like, what is the rationale for that? This is going to be the thing over, because it's not that kind of song.
I wanted to build an excitement like that's the bridge, right? So what's coming? And that last part of the phrase is like, I have pretty small fingers and it's really hard to play actually, but it sounds really cool. It sounds very different than anything I've heard. The guitar that's doing the heavy stuff, the chugging is, it's two guitars at least. One is playing the higher octave, one is playing the lower octave, just to fatten it up a bit.
So you always prefer to do an extra layer rather than use an octave or pedal or something like that?
Yeah, sometimes I'll use the octave, but most of the time I pan them or something. And then it's just, the idea to get to the chorus, give them something to build.
So yes, so let's play, I guess this is the chorus. I had labeled it the B section, so this is about 41 seconds. So that little end, that's what I was referring to as the Weezer chord.
Oh, yeah.
They do that
I hadn't thought about that, yeah.
But yeah, I really like some of the note choices in the lead going up there. Like you're going a little higher than one, it's not just the pattern and then move the pattern up 2 frets or whatever it would be. It is stretch it a little extra far.
For sure, yeah. And what's funny is there are two guitars, again, at least, doing the melody part, and you can kind of hear that it's not a straight harmony. Like there's not one playing an actual harmony part, but it does overlap. It's doing like an octave, but some of the notes are harmonized within the phrasing. And that's actually, I don't want to say by accident, but it kind of is. It's how I discovered it because I didn't know what melody exactly I was playing, when I was figuring it out. So I would do like what you're saying. I would, instead of going higher all the way, I would just maybe go a lower note or fall. Like I was just, it's all linear. I was playing it all on one string. Mm-hmm. Some of those notes would overlap as like harmony notes. And I kind of went, it adds some texture to it. It's been weird playing it live because I'm playing one guitar, the other guitar player is playing just the chords. So I'm just trying to find the melody that stays as true to this as possible. So far, so good.
Okay, so you're not trying to do Tin Lizzy or whatever dual guitar band of like, hey, do this. I don't even know what Boston does live, or but it's that.
Yeah.
So much built on one guitar layering itself all over the place.
Yeah, we do some harmonies live for sure, but sometimes you need the rhythm guitar filling it out, and that's what we're doing here, and it works fine. I do have an octave pedal that I use live, but not so much for that purpose because it's just an octave. It's not really, it might thicken the tone, but sometimes it sounds weird in the wrong place. It's just, why is that extra note there? But other times it sounds really cool.
So is the live band a new thing as of this album, or is it players that you were playing with all along, or revive?
Yeah, we've been doing it for a while. I've had a few different bass players slipping in and out earlier on. But yeah, no, that's been the same band for a number of years. We don't get enough local gigs, though we haven't played as much as I'd like to. But at least take what we can get, I guess. And
I mean, is this that most of the guys are, the other people in the band are in 3 other bands kind of? It
is true. Everybody has other projects.
What city is this you're in now?
Ottawa.
In Ottawa, okay.
Close to Ottawa, yeah. After this, I have to go shovel the driveway, so I'm like super excited. It's a true Canadian thing, right?
Yeah, so what is the Ottawa music scene in terms of this kind of music?
I mean, honestly, I shouldn't say I'd rather, that's not really fair, but I feel like it's not here, but it's not in a lot of places. I think I get a fair bit of interest from Japan and South Korea. And so, I mean, I'm hoping and really trying to get a small tour to Japan in 2026. I'm working on it. So we'll see. It's going to take a lot of planning and a lot of work, but
it's not like as a podcaster, I have a much larger following in the Madison, in my local area. Like people don't know who, so it becomes, I have a lot of fans. Could I actually get them together? More than 20
right.
in any given place? And, for a musician, I would imagine that'd be much more challenging. I mean, that's even more so the case with my own music, that I'm not too much of a local presence there.
Yeah, it's a hard sell. Well, we have a show coming up, and it's a small room. I mean, you could fit like 100 people in if you squeeze them, probably over capacity. But we pretty much sold that out last time, so hopefully which sounds like, oh wow, that's not like that's not a stadium show, but at the same time, for doing what we're doing locally, it's not bad. Yeah.
Do you feel like there's a niche market for what you do, such that you can plug it? Like, who are the Yngwie Malmsteen fans? Like, where do they?
Yeah.
Is there a particular circuit? Like, if you were playing Prague, which this is sort of on the edge of Prague, or is it not quite in Prague and it's not quite metal, so that you can't like get invited to these festivals or whatever?
Yeah, like Joe Satriani, for example, I believe is probably similar in the sense of not necessarily the compositions or anything, but in the sense of like he's very much about melody, and his fans would probably be into what I'm doing. But man, it's hard to get visibility. I mean, it's the old complaint, as a musician, right? You spend more time trying to be seen on social media than trying to make music. I'd be a better songwriter, better guitar player if I spent more time on that instead of messing around on Instagram or whatever, trying to get noticed. But at least we have the option, I guess. Like,
yes. No, it's great that you can, something that is this, again, niche, but like, I don't know. I feel like that it's melodic enough that it would, exceed, it's not the shredders. I was listening to one of your videos where you're saying, oh, I'm not one of those shredders. I'm not competing on that. That's not exactly what I'm trying to do. This is and
I'm not anti-shred or anything.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, I like a lot of that stuff, but what I don't particularly relate to is the current state of internet guitar Olympics, where it's more about look at me and what I can do, to the point where half of it's fake anyway. And it's like, Nah, it just doesn't like put it in a song, you know. Like it's cool to watch for like 10 seconds or something, but are you going to listen to it driving your car or put it on at a party or something? And but people do listen with their eyes probably more than they ever have, and it's show business. They've been listening with their eyes since, you know, Little Richard and Beatles and all that stuff for sure. But it's just a strange thing because you mentioned festivals and getting on that. There have been some local, and I'm not making this up, there have been local festivals or music events where I've submitted stuff to. And I don't know if it's my reputation or the visuals or what, but one time I ran into somebody at the post office. I didn't know who they were, but they knew who I was because they were part of the committee or whatever of this festival. And they said to my face, yeah, we got your music. Thanks for sending it, but I'm not even going to listen to it. And I'm like, what do you mean? And I was like, oh, they said, oh, you know, it's too heavy. You know, they say it with a smile. Like, and I'm kind of going, what do you even say to that? They just assume it's too heavy. And then I thought to myself, when I was making these posters for this local show that I'm doing, I think the poster looks cool. But if I looked at it and I didn't know me, I didn't know my music, and I saw the picture of me, what am I thinking? You know, what am I going to hear when I see that picture? And so it's like, do I have to change the image or the persona?
Cut your hair, you hippie. You metalhead hippie.
No kidding, right?
Those are not the same things.
No, but that's what I mean. People look at it and go, "This looks kind of witchy," and this guy with the guitar, like it's going to be like, you know. It's. I went to see Trans-Siberian Orchestra a couple weeks ago. It's the third time I've actually seen them, but I remember the first time seeing them. Like looking around in the audience and going, wow, they're like, you know, grandparents in their church recital clothing to come to a concert and little kids and all this stuff. And I was just like, holy crap, these guys did it. They're playing metal. And all of these people are just like, they're loving it. They're like clapping and like, because it's this Christmas thing. And I thought, I'm not doing anything much heavier than they are, marginally less production. But yeah.
All right. I want to talk more about the sociology of all this is fascinating. Let me finish up on this song. So let me just play the end. This could be in that sort of Christmas song. It's very festive and there's little fireworks going off kind of thing. Yeah. I mean, just like start with the end. So that little, what are the electronic noises? Is this just something you found on your keyboard that you're tapping, or is this a pedal?
Which part? You mean oh, that's a little harder than it sounds to do that. Basically, my goal was to make it sound like a tape slow down, like a drag, and we're not dealing with tape anymore. So I had to figure out how to do it. And so what I did was I used a pitch shifter, the parts. I actually dragged the drums to slow them down.
Okay, so this is a studio drum manipulation. All right.
Yeah, and the same thing with everything else. I don't think I slowed anything else down. It just sounds like it was because the pitch was going down, which took a little doing, but it was fun to do because I did each track individually, so it doesn't just all slow down at the same time. It's just all kind of warbling. And the whole purpose for that was because the song is fairly happy as it's going out. And The Day Beneath Yesterday, the whole concept, which nobody would know because if I didn't tell them, but it's the idea being that, you know, you ever have like just a day that is the worst possible day, everything just, you know, like something, everything went wrong. But then this is sort of, the song is sort of like the dream state where everything is beautiful. And then like the slow down is like, oh crap, now I'm awake and I remember yesterday again.
Okay.
So that's the idea between the day being, which nobody would know or care because it's like, why would they, right? But that's where that came from.
Well, and that explains some of how that wrapped up, that you're doing some little bubbly soloing and then it gets this da, da, da. And now we're going to do We're going to do like another
Yes.
a second 3-chord ending here. This is a remarkably short song.
I know.
You get the ideas out, you repeat it maybe once, and then you're out of there. Obviously, as you said, you could add a bunch more notes. You could keep it going.
Yeah. And in fact, it's funny you say that, because that being, I think it was the last song that I wrote for the album and that I'd recorded. And so had I had a little bit more time, that's one that I might have actually made a little bit longer, like repeated something. I don't know that it needs it, however. And I think that's one of the things. I rarely have a song that exceeds 4 minutes, like if it even makes it to that. Most of my songs are under or around the 3-minute mark. This one, I don't even think it's like 2.5 minutes, if that. And I'm not even sure. But yeah, I like to get the point across, especially like instrumental music. You could go proggy and go, I gotta like write some 11-minute, but it's not really my thing. And again, being somebody who wrote for bands with lyrics most of my life, the idea was, here's your song structure. And I can certainly deviate from the typical structure a little bit with instrumental music, but I still like to keep it where it flows nicely and, keep it interesting.
All right, let's look back a couple albums to Thoughts and Scares, 2022. The song is Broken Glass and Disappointment, coming in at 3 minutes. Do you want to say a little bit before we get it here?
Yeah, it's a weird song. There's a little bit of a classical type thing going on in places. Paul Gilbert actually gave me the title for the song. So that's where that came from. And that was from me talking to him about trying a technique that he was explaining in a metaphor that I was making it harder on myself, and then like trying to make what did he say, a window or a wall out of a window or something like that, and that's how you end up with broken glass and disappointment. And he was trying to be Paul Stanley or something, but it was hilarious, and I said I'm putting that in a song title. We just laughed about that, but that's where that came from.
All right, so we got sort of a little circusy. Oingo Boingo is one of my favorite bands when I was in college. Halloween sort of sound. Yeah, any thought about where this little fast thing came from?
I think that was just one of those things where I was messing around, just fooling around on the guitar. And I went, oh, that's kind of funny. And then thought it was a good intro to where it was going to go. Not one to shy away from the quirky and whimsical music parts, for sure.
Let's hear where the full band comes in. Definitely actually metal here. What are your sort of favorite bands that would be doing these kind of riff-based songs, these gestures? Because this is not the little vocally melody that these are like written with your fingers, kind of.
Riffs. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Good question. Man, I mean, I loved Randy Rhoads. Well, I still love Randy Rhoads, and so he did more on those two albums than most guitar players would ever do. And I always loved Diary of a Madman and that kind of thing. So maybe there's a little bit of that just off the top of my head. I don't know. I listen to a lot of different kind of music, and sometimes it's not clear to me where certain things come from. And sometimes it's like, oh, it's sort of like a B-52s thing, and people are like, what? I'm like, no, trust me.
Well, if you're doing guitar instrumentals, then like some amount of surf is going to get in there. Like there's just no, especially if you have a whammy bar.
Yeah. When I was a kid, my dad got me a Ventures record, and I played that over and over and over again. I wonder if I still have it. I'm not sure. Yeah. So those things certainly have an impact, whether you realize it or not. Same thing with like country stuff. I'll occasionally do like hybrid picking licks, and I'm like, where did that even come from? I don't really listen to much country, but I watched a lot of movies. And when I was a kid, like Jerry Reed and Chet Atkins and all those guys, and like now I appreciate them a lot more.
Ever like Clarence White from the late Birds stuff? You ever dabble in that sort of?
I don't know.
I know. So you don't do anything. Well, he's a guy that would like, it would sort of sound like he was using a slide, even though he wasn't using a slide.
Oh, okay.
Or maybe he had a little special. There was some technology involved, I think.
Okay.
Yeah, so well, let me play another section here. So 42 seconds, the chorus. So, I mean, I can see that like as a stacked vocal there. That's I'm not sure what the genre is. That is but the fact that you're doing it on the one and the second time it's the echo. Any thought about the, this is it's like you've hit three different styles in these three different sections. Not that it doesn't flow.
Yeah. And I think that chorus section sounds to me a little bit circusy too. At least the guitar harmony parts.
Sure.
That was, I don't want to say out of my comfort zone, but it was not the kind of thing that I would normally write. And I do remember that being something that I must have been messing around, and I put it in my phone notes, my voice memos. I do remember going back to that. What was I doing there? Because occasionally I'll do that, and I probably have like 1,000 voice memos. But yeah, it still seemed a little circusy to me. Yeah, it's a metal circus.
Sure. Yeah. And then with these instrumentals, the obvious thing, since you're not going to have like the vocal stop and do the solo or something, is have some sort of breakdown. So I see that we have at 134, let me play. Okay, that doesn't actually sound like much of a breakdown. I don't know why. Well, I'd written mostly bass and drums with one guitar on the left side following along. Yeah, what is the function? Is that sort of the bridge?
Yeah, I would say that is what I would call it. And it's very much the guitar is pulled down in the volume, the level in the mix intentionally, because the bass is kind of doing something cool, and I wanted it to just have a contrast to everything else, because when it goes into the solo, I wanted it to, again, a lot of times it's what's coming next is where the consciousness comes from, to the way it's mixed or what I'm doing in a particular part.
Well, let me play. I think 155 is where the solo is here. You're still doing some version of the earlier thing, but with a few more little ornaments. So, I mean, is that the kind of thing that kind of just comes out as you're laying, like it was always exactly the same every performance, or, where those little dooloos are?
Well, I mean, I had to compose it because it's a little bit out of what, like, again, it's not like just improvised. It starts out kind of that way, but then I had to kind of go, okay. But the part underneath it, I thought, and the only reason I say this because we started playing this live for the first time for this show, and I was telling my other guitar player, it's easy, it's just the same thing as the beginning. And then what I realized is it actually moves up in 4 different positions, and they're really pretty complicated. So I'm like, oh, sorry, man. So he's like doing all these. So what's going on underneath the bouncy lead part is like actually some pretty complicated changes, but it just sounded so whimsically classical to me for some reason. I don't know if that's really the word, but it's bouncy, and at least to my ear, it catches my attention, like, oh, something's going on, in contrast to the rest of the song.
Yeah, I haven't actually asked you. So is there some music school stuff behind the very compositional approach that you've got here? So, what we've been talking about so far is just various rock influences getting put together and all very compatible with someone who's starting with this sort of the regular rock with vocals influences. But yeah. Not
really. I mean, I've had some informal lessons when I was a kid where I didn't learn to read music. I learned a little bit of reading music when I was taking drum lessons, oddly enough. I was 8 to 11 or something, and I didn't really progress very much because I didn't practice very much because it was, like school drumming stuff. And I just wanted to play beats and, rock. But I was a kid, right? So many years later, I realized I learned more than I thought I did. I did go to a guitar workshop in Toronto. It had Billy Sheehan and Paul Gilbert and that. And so I got a scholarship to go there. But it was just a week of learning guitar stuff. But those are my main schooling. Other than that, it's all just self-taught.
Well, and it's amazing what you can do with I took a summer of voice lessons, and in fact, I recorded the lessons and I used those exercises for years, so that I got much more value out of this, 5 weeks or whatever I did. Yeah. And I think it's the same kind of thing. Like, okay, you go and you learn one particular weird guitar thing online that changes. Yeah. That expands your style in some radical way.
Yeah, and sometimes it's your perspective too. In the guitar workshop, I just learned lessons about, I think, my perception of music and using my ears differently and being more open-minded and stuff. So I think there was a lot of that. Like it helped. But also feeling kind of down on myself. Like going into that, I was feeling like, this is one of the things I said to Paul Gilbert. I was like, man, if I practiced every minute that I have left for the rest of my life, I won't be as good as you were when you were like 21 or something. And he said, yeah, but if you learn something new every day, that's like at the end of the year, how many new things do you have? It's not about a competition. Music isn't about that, right? It's again, it's not the Guitar Olympics. And now I realize I don't even care if I'm a great guitar player. I just care about making good music. That's more important.
So back a little bit to the sociology. How loud is this?
Yeah, sorry.
How loud is it? Yeah. Because I could see this be compatible with, I just really like these styles and I'm playing these little compositions and they're not going to hurt anybody, even if you're, 70 years old. You're not going to, or, you got to really experience this live because, the amp only sounds good if you turn it up past a certain amount, that kind of guitar. Yeah. So which is 11. Closer to the truth of those characterizations?
Yeah, that's a good I think it's 2 totally different things too, isn't it? Like live is a different energy but some of the places we're playing, like this gig coming up, we're using an electronic kit for drums, and in this particular room other people use real drums, but it's like we have control over the mix, so people's ears don't just go, they don't go, I can't stay any longer, it's like it's a small room, and you can only be as quiet as your cymbals and stuff, so and my drummer is extremely cool about tolerating just playing it on an electronic kit. But
well, and some of it's not even just the this is one where you got a more pointy tone. I had my guitarist in college had a Les Paul and he really liked Steve Howe and he would put it on that ultra high tone setting. So even if we weren't blasting, needles poking. Like this is just part of like the way that he liked to rock.
Yeah.
Seems like you have generally a smoother palette, but there's.
Well, nowadays I think the tones have sort of gotten a little better, but I still, I playing live, I have a hard time not hitting a bunch of pinch harmonics. It's almost like an excitement just do it and. Try to be conscious of the read the room, so to speak. But at the same time, when I'm playing, I want to be me, right? I don't want to worry about holding back or whatever. If we know it's a gig that's going to be family friendly, oh, you're at a fair. Okay, well, we're going to maybe play some of the less metal songs. You're on a metal festival, play the metal songs,
Well, and you're presenting, you got the hair, you got maybe your 7th string. I don't know if the 7th string means
I know, yeah.
anything to most people, but like to me that means, that's I get to play the really chunky stuff. Yeah, actually, when you're on stage, are you switching between 3 different guitars? Or do you just find something that is a happy medium?
For whatever reason, well, I know the reason, but a lot of the main tuning for all of these albums is half step down, so E flat. Sometimes it's drop D or whatever, but occasionally, like Day Beneath Yesterday, that's standard tuning, but most of them are tuned. But I guess the point being, I do switch between tunings, so I have some different guitars for that. Yeah, and it's fun to play different guitars.
I mean, when people say alternate tunings, they usually don't mean tune the whole thing down a step.
Yeah.
Are you also, messing around with not just drop D, but the more elaborate ones, like just
a little bit.
Okay.
Yeah. There's a song on the new album called The Unnameable, which I didn't name because I couldn't come up with a name for the song. It's just there was a movie in the 80s, a horror movie, like a B movie called The Unnameable, and I thought that was funny. So the reason that the guitar is tuned down a half step is because when I started this whole thing, a couple of my main bands were tuned that way. And it's usually a singer thing, right? It's usually not because of, the guitar sounds cooler a half step down. It's because a singer wants it that way. And when I started recording, I just didn't bother changing it. And then I kind of got stuck with it. Like, well, this is what we're doing. So
let's get the third song out there. The most straightforwardly metally song, but a lot of King Crimson stuff. I feel like you've listened to my podcast and I don't know. Yeah, I've had Steve Hackett and some King Crimson related people on. So I'm hearing in the main gesture here, this sustained note is very much in my. I guess that's part of why the metal doesn't have to be pokey. It could be like bowing a violin. That you could do these levels of sustain. The Earth is B flat is the name of the song from your first full album, Lifting the Curse. Yeah, do you want to say stuff about that?
I chose that song and I can barely remember the song. I remember that riff, which I came up with sitting on the couch poking fun at my cat. One of my cats, I was just playing the riff and the cat was having fun, and then it turned into a song. It sounded spacey. And I was also watching a lot of X-Files at that point, so that's that's why there's some sci-fi sounding things in it as well.
Well, it sounds like you have some sort of pedal or something or a post processing that is adding lower synthy overtones to your playing, unless that's just an actual keyboard that you overdubbed.
Might be. I'd have to hear it again. Man,
should we just listen to it and you can?
Yeah.
All right, here it is. The Earth is B flat. You've got a little more effects on this. You've got sort of this reverse delay getting you into, do you remember, is this all post or is this?
I do remember doing two things. One is playing like separate guitars that are octaves just to get, because it sounds like a bit high and a bit low, but there's an effect and I don't know what it is. It was just a plug-in. Mm-hmm. So I can't take full credit for whatever that sound is other than deciding to use it and going, that sounds really cool. Because I do like the way it has a real prominent sound, like the effect, but it's not taking over the actual notes of the guitar, if that makes any sense. It's not like sometimes those effects just wash right over it and it's like comes out of control and that. And I might have dialed it back too, but I don't remember what the plugin was called, but it definitely was just one of those GarageBand plugins to get that sound.
So in terms of the riff itself, I mean, this is, are you familiar with the Steve Hackett, Please Don't Touch and Hack It to Bits, these sort of sustainy solo things that he does, or?
Not really. I have to, it's funny. That's another one that's off my radar, but that I have to listen to for sure.
Yes, he was originally the guitarist in the 70s for Genesis, and then the Hack It to Bits is actually from the GTR album. So this is when I was in high school in 86 or 87, something like that, with Steve Howe, where the whole song is really one riff like that. What do you feel like you're channeling? Or did this feel like, this original thing you were stumbling on? Just obviously the riff itself, I haven't heard this exact thing, but yeah, this approach of it's not a melody, it's a sustained note, and it's the work that the chords underneath are doing that is sort of propelling it.
I think a lot of it is me messing around with the whole tone scale because it's like, where does that fit? But it does have to me, kind of a sci-fi spacey feel because it's floating. Like a whole tone never has you could just keep playing it and it doesn't resolve. Whereas like think of a major scale, where it starts and where it ends, right? But the whole tone just keeps going, and that's where that came from. And even that weird little kind of descending lick that is harmonized right before it goes into that slow halftime thing at the end, I can hear it. That's just a whole tone slide down with two guitars in different positions doing a harmony of the whole tone. So that's where that came from.
Let me play just 19 seconds in where you throw in a little bit of tapping here. Yeah, so just this little transition that we're going to chunk. We might as well put in some little ornament there.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that's all really what it is. Just playing around and seeing what happens.
And then that part that I just ended, the I mean, I guess this is not terribly unlike one of the gestures in the previous song. And he thought about this 6 years later.
Yeah, it seems like 20 years later. It's wild. Yeah, I think that might have just been a case of here's a riff that I was working on and it fits. It's not really a romantic description but sometimes that's just the way it comes together, right? It's like,
well, let's hear the way that ends. So around 38 seconds. So yes, are you a King Crimson fan? Because that is exactly a 90s sort of King Crimson sort of gesture.
No, I mean, I'm aware of King Crimson, but I haven't really listened to much of it. But now I'm curious. Now I want to. And it's funny because I do remember, the line goes down. One of them, the same type of thing, but it goes up. I think it changes each time just slightly to exit the riff.
And are you saying you're using the whole tone scale to get out of that? So that's where the weirdness of those arpeggios is coming from, is because it's whole tone jumps or something.
Yeah, I'm not sure about that. That's kind of like when you are going half. I guess it would be a flat 5 each one on each, and climbing up the strings a little bit. The whole tone is more in the actual melody over that chunky riff. And in a few other places too. That's
56 seconds. So I put this as the B section again, sort of what we just taught, but a little more movement in the bass. We haven't really talked about how you move your bass in regard to the guitars here.
No, but that's an interesting observation, because in that it's one of the few times where I actually am just playing the riff on the bass, that I'm matching it with the bass, the guitar. I don't do that too often. At this point, I can, with some confidence, consider myself actually a bass player too when I'm playing bass, as opposed to a guitar player playing the bass. We all start out that way, I guess, if guitar is our first instrument, but I spent a lot of time just trying to play it as a different person. I'm playing bass. I'm a bass player now, not somebody who's just trying to play the bass to get it over with, And
Are you still playing with a pick?
I do a bit of both.
Okay.
I have always liked playing with the pick, but I do a lot of hybrid picking with the bass too, where I'm using my fingers and the pick. I like the attack of it, but I like that being able to do octaves and stuff and just sort of double up with the other finger and that. And my hands are kind of small, so sometimes it's hard to reach things otherwise. Yeah,
we didn't really even talk about that with relation to the guitar. I was assuming you were doing everything with a pick, but if you're doing da, da, and you want to hit some little, that using your other fingers to just be able to do that without having to be so fast with your pick hand.
Kind of jumping the strings of it. And I'm a fan of all different, guitar players go, oh man, here are my heroes, right? And for me, it's like I have my bass heroes, I have my drum heroes, I have all those people that I love. So it's not just, I should be a singer. That's what I need to work on next. But Dennis Dunaway, when I was a kid, that was sort of like the guy. He was Alice Cooper Band's original bass player, and he played bass like nobody had ever heard before. I was just a kid, but still to this day, he's one of my favorites. So
we'll bring back the sociology a little bit to once you add lyrics, well, then it's about something. It's a theme. And I was listening to this 2018 EP. So before this Creeping Beauty on your website, where there's the lyrics, do you know what it's like to take a life? Okay, that's, and the next song is about suicide.
Oh, Blue-Eyed Suicide, yeah. Now, Creeping Beauty was a very much themed band, right? So I came up with this concept, and I wrote all of the songs much the way that I did here, but I did write lyrics too. And a lot of it was very horror based, and that's the point. We play these shows with fake blood all over us and looking so it was a horror themed band. So, which is not to say that some of the lyrics, like Blue-Eyed Suicide, wasn't written to be funny. It was actually a serious song, but a lot of it, like To Take a Life, that was supposed to be kind of funny, tongue-in-cheek, I guess.
Sure. And I always wonder about the level of irony that, a band like Kiss or, any of your super metal bands that are, some of which are very theatrical, or not, maybe not actually biting the heads off bats, but happy to be known to be how people think that I bite the heads off bats.
Yeah. Yeah, like Alice Cooper, probably never did the things that people said he did, but if he just kept his mouth shut and let people think that he did, then it's good publicity,
Yeah, so it seems like it chooses a particular audience, whereas like the Ramones, okay, they're doing something actually not that dissimilar in terms of the level of volume and stuff, but it's just a different leather jackets and sunglasses instead. That it's no Halloween explicit.
Right.
I don't know. So what is the fun? It seems like you like to do some of the theatrical, at least play with these ideas. I mean, do you feel like you don't get to do that as much now that you're doing just instrumental stuff, or you still can, as with the quirky song, that they're just in the gestures, you can have the humor.
Sure. And I think so. And I think a lot of times I still get a kick out of the titles, coming up with titles for the songs, and
the G-string murders.
Yeah. Well, anybody who's had a Les Paul knows that the G-string is the one that goes out of tune and it makes you want to kill it. So that's where that came from. Oh yeah, G-string murders. I thought that was hilarious, and I came up with it myself. And then I Googled it after, and there was like an old movie called that, really old movie called the G-string murders.
But not guitar related.
No, but it's so strange how you think, like the song on Hexology called Racing for Pinks. I thought it was hilarious because it's a real surf song with a motorcycle guitar and all that. And I thought Racing for Pinks. So it's like, but then, I'll search on, if I'm on Instagram, want to use that song in a story or something. I'm not the only one with that title. And it's shocking I think I have some pretty unique titles, but sometimes you think you're completely unique, but doesn't work that way.
Yes, verbal humor, in particular puns. I think of lots of puns, but then I look it up and like, oh, there's a whole store named that. Like that's not it.
Yeah.
There's no original puns.
No, that's it. But I guess, like, to me, I know it sounds probably pretty weird because it's instrumental stuff, but to me, when I'm doing an album, it almost feels like a concept album, mainly because, like, I grew up listening to albums, like a lot of us did. And so now it's kind of like, here's your 30 seconds on TikTok or something, right? But it was, to me, I'd put on a record and listen to the whole side and flip it and listen, or cassette or whatever it was. And so when I put it together, I feel like everything should have a flow to it. And, and sometimes the titles and the themes are like that too.
So is there a rock opera in your future? Or at least, you don't even have to write singing. You just have some British person read some narration
narrating
or over a couple of sections.
Yeah, that's a good idea. I thought about that actually a few years back, like Creeping Beauty. Once we stopped really being a band, we did some acoustic stuff and that. And I'm like, we should do Creeping Beauty, the musical, do that as a stage production.
Yes, there's a fellow I had on the show named Clive Nolan, who's sort of a newer prog guy, and he's done a bunch of these sort of metal flavored musicals, and now is the big battle between the orcs and these sort of fancy. I think it might be better to. I mean, I people love this kind of stuff. Back from listening to I had a LP of Peter and the Wolf. Where they read the story and then they play the Prokofiev stuff and the duck is the oboe and whatever I think there's a general appeal to that stuff that can even get then fans that could latch onto that beyond who would normally listen to the kind of music. But on the other hand, if you are making about orcs finally, then you've narrowed your audience even more to the certain kind of dweebs that would appreciate.
Well, plus it's a lot of work. And it's a lot of commitment from other people and stuff. I've done a few stage productions like We Will Rock You and what's the 9 to 5, the Dolly Parton one. And so I've done those and it's a whole, I mean, great experiences, but it's a lot of work.
Sure.
And so I'm not afraid of doing the work, but man, you got to be committed. That's like you're doing nothing else for, the next 6 months kind of thing. And
well, I'm just very impressed that you've been able to do something that's so focused on your compositions and you're determining everything, but yet you can still get a band to play behind you and more or less play exactly, or does the band sort of loosen up and you get a second guitarist that's good enough that you give them a solo and let them, or is it very much recreating the albums?
It is recreating it to start with, but I definitely do, like, my guitar player's phenomenal, Trevor. He definitely gets some solo spots too. It's funny because, like, we do Wonders of the Invisible World, right? And I'm like, all right, well, you take the first solo, I'll play, just play the solo, and then he plays pretty much what I wrote. I'm like, dude, just play what you want.
Well, that's wonderful if people are actually on the same page, and the fact that that you've been playing with these guys for a while.
And they're good people, which you want good players, but man, I don't want to play with people I don't want to hang around with. You want to have people who are reliable and just good people. That's the most important thing. At this point, I've seen it all, I guess.
Well, and I'm tempted to say something about just you're in Ottawa, the chances of having well-behaved people, you're not in LA.
Yeah.
But these are all just baseless preconceptions about the ruthlessness of LA musicians or something.
Yeah, well, possibly that's possible too. I remember years ago wanting to sort of pursue the hired gun type of position, like I just want to get out and tour and I'll play, because I have no problems playing exactly what someone else will give me to play. But it was a weird spot. Like now I pretty much do. I did it a little bit, but I remember having a conversation with Chuck Garrick from Alice Cooper's band, and also with Blasco, who plays with Rob Zombie, but he played with Ozzy for a while too. And both of them, both bass players, and both gave me the same basic advice that, like, they were in the right place at the right time. And like, so in other words, if you live in LA or Las Vegas and you're a fixture that people get to know you, they know that even at my level, I get people sometimes asking me to put in a good word somewhere. And I'm like, I'm nobody, like I know some of these people but I can't put in like, because they don't want to put in a good word based on my word for somebody else, because if that person, like, I don't know what they're like, they might be great on their instrument, but what if they show up drunk all the time? They, like that's everybody's reputation, right? So.
Well, it was great getting to know your style and listening through these tunes, and grateful that they weren't more 10-minute long ones.
Yes.
Actually, I do like some music like that. So I like that these are so melody oriented and, just punch you and get out. So yeah, on that note, we're going to end by listening to another sort of quirky one from the new album, Dangerous Curves. Again, the new album is Perpetual Night 2025. To say goodbye here, do you want to say a few words about that song before we leave people with it?
Yeah, the reason I call it Dangerous Curves is because it starts off one way and just keeps changing to the very end. So there's no really repeating anything for the most part. It just kind of morphs into something totally different by the end of it. And thanks for having me on, by the way. I do listen to your podcast and I love the music talk. So definitely a pleasure to be here.
Well, yes. And let this be a lesson to the listeners. If you're a musician, you want to be on the show, just email me. And I did take 2 years to actually get you on the show, but you came out with another album that was even better.
Yeah.
So
cool.
it was
Yeah.
the wait was well received. All right. Thanks. Thanks so much to Darren. Again, that's darrenboyd.com. And you can find him on the streaming services. And if you want to hear that material that has vocals on it, before all the material we talked about today, that's only on his Bandcamp page at darrenmichaelboyd.bandcamp.com. Now, this was my last full episode of 2025, recorded way back on December 11th. So I thank Darren for being patient with me as I preempted him with the year-end chat with Roger that I hope most of you got to listen to. I've since talked to singer-songwriter Robert Diebel, who presents very literate, very mellow, atmospheric indie folk rock. And I've got a great lineup already set up for the next few months. Make sure you're hearing all those episodes promptly by subscribing directly to the Nakedly Examined Music feed. You can find the links at nakedlyexaminedmusic.com. And I would love if you'd leave a nice rating and review there. It will help get exposure to the podcast. I want to thank those that reached out to me with guest suggestions after the solicitation to do that on the year-end discussion. I now have a few hip-hop names that I'm looking at. I welcome any additional thoughts you might have, and if you're a musician, please feel free to volunteer yourself as a guest, just like Darren here did. I hope you all had a good holiday season. I've advanced a little bit on recording my own album, but still no release date to announce. I hope you are staying creative in whatever way you can, finding new music, finding things that express yourself, making things that express yourself, better yet. However you can, keep on musicking. Until next time, this is Mark Lintonmeyer signing off.